My name is Liz Prisley. The title of this poem is Harvest. 4 years after my mother quit smoking, this time for the last time, I found out that she had smoked while pregnant with me. No explanation was offered other than everyone was doing it or nobody knew any better. Excuses that had never successfully gotten me out of trouble as a child. See, I knew that she had quit smoking maybe for the 10th time while pregnant with my older sister, so why was I any different? Or was this, in fact, the explanation for why I was different, 2 months premature, underdeveloped lungs, lack of muscle memory, stunted growth, life choked? By the age of 6, I was diagnosed with asthma, allergy-induced, exercise-induced, sleep-induced, anxiety-produced, medications overused. Most of my symptoms, well, they disappeared by my teens. See, 4 years after my last asthma attack, my mother quit smoking, almost for the last time. But the lure of nicotine seemed to be magnified by the stress of moving houses, or maybe it was my father's chemotherapy, so I don't blame her for giving in. It is not this cigarette, its number by now surely in the millions, that I begrudge her. You see, I smoked my first cigarette at the age of 22. But it was also my last, because though my brain had forgotten where we came from, my lungs were able to taste the residue of bad decisions and ignorance, of tar and nicotine, of high blood pressure and coronary artery disease, of 5 blockages stinted and double bypass surgery. See, 5 years after my mother quit smoking, this time, for the last time, she had her first heart attack. 2 years and 3 hospitalizations later came the open heart surgery. See, this disease of the heart has stalked my mother through generations of family history, to the taste of tar blackened victory when she smoked her first cigarette at the age of 11. Eventually, it will kill her. As the cardiac surgeon explained, there are only so many veins that doctors can harvest from her body before her options run out. And as I sat in that hospital waiting room, holding my father's hand, knowing that just down the hall, another man's hands were holding my mother's heart, I wondered if the iodine residue on her skin had been intentionally Marlboro orange, or if her breast milk had been my first introduction to the taste of regret, or if cigarettes will always smell just a little bit like home. See, I don't want to blame her for this unpredictable mixture of genetic predisposition and smoking that has led to the scar down the middle of her chest from where it has been cracked open. All I know is this: my mother's body is a harvest, and I am just her most fragile fruit. This poem is called Cancer Baby. The first time I was called a freak was on the playground in the 4th grade by a boy who told me he liked me. I just walked away. He seemed surprised, like surely I hadn't heard him, repeated it louder, said it over and over. I like you. I like you. I shrugged, said, so, and kept walking. Then, freak, you're just a freak. How abnormal it must have been for this boy who by the 4th grade already knew he owned everything around him, including me. Unusual. This idea that a woman could own herself, her body, her desire. This is certainly not the message that I received in my abstinence-only sex education class there. We watched a Christian youth pastor stick clear packing tape to the arm of girl after girl, compared their sexual activity to the skin cells clinging to the packing tape, told them they were dirty, said this is why their relationships don't stick, made no mention of the boys shedding cells into all of the girls around them. Atypical. At 16, I'd never had a boyfriend before. My friends told me that any boyfriend was better than none. You could always trade up like job applications. Boyfriends always looked for relevant experience. 3 of my classmates that year found out they were pregnant. 2 of them left school. One of them remained to watch the growing of her belly and the growing of the rumors that spread about her. None of them mentioned the father. Like somehow this 16-year-old girl had created a baby by herself, isolated. Like how it feels for an entire school to know you lost your virginity and judge you for it, right after they pressured you into it in the first place, irregular. Like my heartbeat from time to time, or my period, or my self-worth, or my ability to look myself in the mirror deviant, like the look on the pharmacist's face when I asked for a plan B, or the man whose cells were swimming inside of me was not a man that I wanted to create a human being with, much less spend 5 more minutes around. Aberrant. This idea that a woman could want to have sex but not want a baby. That a woman could own her sexuality without being owned by a man or a pill or a baby. How abnormal. Like the cells that my gynecologist identified in my body. But sitting there in that crinkly paper gown on a bed with protruding stirrups, I was too busy being relieved. The pregnancy test they forced me to take came back negative. I forgot I'm there to find out if I have cervical cancer, because the sad truth is, in that moment, I would have rather have cancer than be pregnant. You see, there's a solidarity for cancer survivors that evaporates in the face of unwed motherhood. Nobody donates to fundraisers for diapers or formula, so at least I'll rest assured that these abnormal cells can be scraped from my cervix in a procedure that will be so much less invasive than any boy who ever broke his way into my body. This poem is called Perseverance. To persevere is to move forward in the face of difficulty, to keep going when things get tough, when entropy wants nothing but to hold you back and nothing moves forward in the face of difficulty, like a poet, like a teacher, like a school child, like a bullet. And what can a poet do but speak? And what can a teacher do but shield? What can a child do but hide or play dead in order to stay alive? And what can a bullet do but shatter? Shatter desks, dreams, families, futures. A bullet is nothing but a coward playing hide and seek with a gun, burying all of its secrets in the arms of school children who are too small to carry them. And what can a teacher carry but the heavy expectation of parents who want them to put their bodies between a child and a bullet? And what does a poet carry? The weight of the task to change hearts and minds, to somehow craft a story to convince a world that a child is worth more than a bullet, even though a bullet carries a paycheck for a politician and a child doesn't. And I don't know if I have a story worth that many millions. All of my stories start to sound the same. Like that one time where I was the teacher in the classroom and it took months to force my administration to take note of my student of concern, even though he kept writing essays in which he imagined himself Jesus come back to baptize us all in his holy fire. Only there is nothing holy about a bullet, except the host of bodies it leaves in its wake. And the only thing about me that flies as true as a bullet is my rage, and my rage is holy. My rage is the only thing carrying me forward in the face of difficulty. And what is rage but the perseverance of hope in the face of the impossible? And what can a teacher do but hope that their desk is broad enough to absorb every bullet? Hope they don't have to choose between shielding your child or making it home to their own. And what can a poet do but speak, to launch their words sharp and true in the face of apathy? Pray that a poem can shatter the inaction of a community, persuade an audience to do more than listen to another poem about gun violence, to be braver than the bullet and the child and the teacher and the poet, and make this poem obsolete. And what could be more holy than that? My name is Liz Prisley, and my poems are meant to connect to people on an emotional level. I think sometimes we have different lived experiences, but we share so many overlapping emotions. And I think spoken word poetry is one of the things where you get to convey the emotion of a story, and someone in an audience can connect to that emotion. And even if we don't have the same lived experience, we can share the commonality, that common ground of that emotion. And I can feel what it might be like to have been in your shoes, or vice versa.